Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the JPAR Magnolia Group live chat here today with Desiree, our Realtor of the Year. Desiree, I'll introduce her a little bit more in here in just a second, but I'm excited to have her on today because Desiree has been an integral part of the JPAR family here at JPAR Magnolia Group and has been an integral part in the real estate community in the Columbia, South Carolina area. So really excited to have her on. My name's Kristen, and I am one of the owners here at JPAR Magnolia Group. And I'm going to be bringing you videos each week with different members of our team to introduce you to the faces behind the scenes at JPAR. So help me welcome Desiree Merriweather. She is not only our CCRA Realtor of the Year, but she is a very distinguished realtor in our community and our education trainer. She is our broker support. She is our help with all things. And Desiree, I'll let you give us your official training title here at JPAR because honestly, it probably doesn't do you justice.
I think the title that we came up with was Lead Education and Development Coordinator. Kind of
exactly. It's a catch-all, exactly, because that's exactly what you do here at JPAR with us is a catch-all. But Desiree has been with us. Desiree, when did you join? You joined JPAR in the summer of 19. Was that correct?
Yeah, I believe it was June or July, 6 months in.
Okay. So Desiree has basically been with us since the beginning, since JPAR Magnolia Group has opened. And like I said, it's been a really important part to the growth here at JPAR and to the support of all of our agents. And she has set a great example to all of our agents as well. So Desiree, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the business, what made you get in, all of that good stuff?
Technically, I've been in the business, and let's see, I got to back up and do the count from my kids. So my oldest is 23. So I got in the business right before his first birthday as an assistant, not as a full-time realtor, but as an assistant to another realtor in the city.
Okay.
So I did it because I had young children. Well, at that time, young child, and he had a couple of health issues. So I needed a job that gave me a little bit of flexibility, but didn't require me to get any additional education or skill sets while I was raising him. So I started out as an assistant.
Okay. And what made you transition from assistant? What was the moment or the defining idea that made you transition from assistant to full-time realtor?
Honestly, it was a little bit of arrogance. I was working for someone who is still a very great realtor, and I was running their back office. And I remember thinking, good grief, she makes a lot of money doing this, and I can do this. And everything that she was paying me to do for her, I could have done for myself. And I was needing to do some things differently for the family. So I was thinking, okay, yeah, I can do this. And it was that arrogance of seeing somebody else do it and thinking it's easier than what it was, but also knowing that I had enough of the skill set to possibly have a modicum of the same success that she had.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes that little bit of competitive edge is all we need to help us drive forward in whatever it is that we want to do. So I've definitely seen that a time or two.
Yeah.
So, having been in the business about 20 years or so now, mm-hmm. How would you say that you have seen your business or seen the business of real estate change over those 20 years? That was not what I prepared you for.
No, but I think on each one of those, I've seen different things. My business definitely has changed over that time because I went through the paces of being a brand new agent, trying to work part-time on the side, married with a little support, to being a single parent, doing it full-time on my own, and still dealing with the changes that naturally occurred in the economy and in real estate. And I think that's a little different than how real estate itself has changed in that same time frame.
Okay. So kind of sidetracking a little bit, we talked about already, we kind of made that announcement at the beginning of this video that you recently were named as Realtor of the Year for the CCRA. And for those that aren't familiar, CCRA is the Central Carolina Realtors Association here in Columbia, South Carolina. And at the awards in December, Desiree was named Realtor of the Year, which is a great accomplishment. What do you feel like? So I have a couple of questions in regard to this.
Okay.
What do you feel like was the thing that helped you achieve that award?
Kind of hard to say because it's not an award I was expecting. At the awards gala in December, I'm just sitting with agents, wanting to have an end of the year celebration and know that they do awards every year. But I was there to network and to blow off some steam and to support everybody else. And so I was not of the mindset that I was going to receive anything that particular year. It was a full blown surprise. The folks beside me were kind of keyed in a little faster than I was when they started doing the descriptions of what the person had done and what they had offered. And I'm running through my head like, who do I know that's doing that? Oh, it could be this person. And folks beside me are like, Desiree, they're talking about you. I'm like, no, they're not. And then eventually it got to a point where I was like, oh, wow, they're really talking about me. I don't know what to say. So it was a surprise. It was an honor. I was humbled, honestly, because I know what that recognition means in our market. And so for me, the things that I have been doing over the years, because I saw a need, because I wanted to help, it was real humbling to see that everybody had been paying attention, even though I didn't really think of them paying attention, to say that they appreciated what I have been doing.
And what do you, I guess, tell us a little bit about what you do in the realtor community? What have you been doing in the past few years that maybe could have led up to receiving that recognition?
One, I am a supporter of the realtor brand. I believe that being a realtor is important. I believe in the code of ethics. For those that know me, I tend to be pretty black and white. And, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And sometimes the things that we do have far reaching consequences, positive and negatively. And so as I worked over the years, I've dealt with individuals that made me raise an eyebrow like The Rock and say, how are you getting away with this? And I just realized that I had a good foundation. I had an employer when I was an assistant, and I had a broker who said, you've got to set an example. Statistically, when you look at rankings of occupations, people put realtors near car salesmen. And I just have never thought that we did not carry ourselves in a way that people wouldn't value what we did. So my whole goal and purpose in my personal career was to portray a better example and provide a better opinion to the public of who we are and what we did.
Okay. So what, kind of in that vein, what do you feel like it means to be a realtor? Why should people who are, buyers and sellers, people who are looking to make a transaction in real estate, why should they look at someone who is a realtor versus someone who is not under the realtor designation?
The code of ethics is that level of accountability. I tend to put it in the perspective of things that people understand. When you are looking for any other service out there in the world, you're looking for someone who is skilled in that profession and that has some type of legal backing, that if you are unhappy, there's a means for you to get recompense or to get compensation or judgment if you feel like you've been harmed. And being a realtor says that we have standards. We have rules and guidelines that we follow that dictate our behavior and that provide you, the public, a means of getting assistance if we don't act the way we're supposed to. Everybody understands doctors have medical malpractice insurance. And if you're not happy or if you're harmed, you sue them, you get their money, they pay for it. they don't understand that as realtors, our code of ethics is kind of like our malpractice insurance. It's letting everybody know that there's a step above us, that if you have questions about how things were done, we're accountable to those standards.
Okay. And I think it's important to note, I'm gonna plug here for a second. I think it's important to note that at JPAR, we are all realtors. That's an important part of the JPAR ethos is that we do have that realtor code of ethics that we abide by, and that we integrate into our daily business, because we want to work with like-minded people. We like to work with good people, right? Not and so with that, I guess, what do you feel like has been, there are a lot of realtors. There's a lot of realtors at JPAR, but you have made a point to stand out as an advocate of the realtor brand, and as a distinguished realtor within the community. So what do you feel like is it that drives you? And I know you've touched on this a little bit, but what do you feel like that has driven you to really advocate for that brand in such a strong way? Because not everybody, they're happy to be a realtor, but not everybody has the strong advocacy that you have for the brand.
My first broker as an agent said something to me that resonated with me years and years ago. And I share that with folks now, which is a lot of times when we get in the business, everybody is on fire to earn and make the money, but necessarily doesn't have that same fire about being educated as to why you even have that ability and what it takes to do it. And his comment to me when I was stressing, stepping out on my own, and whether or not I was going to be able to provide for my family since I wasn't getting a regular paycheck anymore, was until you have the business, know the business, immerse yourself in the education, be a continual student, understand why there's a need for realtors, what the realtor brand means, what the code of ethics means. Educate yourself on the power of our numbers to understand that the freedoms that we have as realtors, our ability to work, the protections that we've put in place for our clients and ourselves are happening because of people who are doing more than just helping people buy and sell real estate. And that was intriguing to me because coming in the business, all you ever heard of was, I'm a buy a house, I'm a sell a house. You never heard, I'm going to the state house to talk to our legislators, to talk to the governor, because there's some things that are happening in the community that are going to impact our ability to buy or sell, that are going to impact our clients, that are going to impact the money that we earn. And I'm curious. And so I took what he said to heart. Mm-hmm. And I started learning. And it was, and it's been an ongoing process. I'm a firm believer that every deal, every interaction, I'm learning something new. And once I learn it, I try not to forget it.
I think speaking on that advocacy with legislation and all of that, or with the government, I think that is an important thing to note, because something that comes to mind in that regard, there's a lot of things that the Realtors Association advocate. I don't know, I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's a lot of things that they stand up for realtors on when it comes to our government and to laws and to different things that take place. But one of the things that comes to mind the most is the beginning of COVID, when everything was shutting down. And the realtor organization was a big part of why realtors were able to continue as basically, essential type personnel, and not to in any way say that we are, or like the nurses that were essential during that time, but the advocacy is what allowed realtors to stay in business and to continue to help people through the pandemic, continue that part of their life. Because as you and I know, people are buying and selling homes every single day. They need help with that every single day.
Absolutely.
And so to put that on hold would have been a massive halt in our economy. And so, that was one thing that stood out to mind. Also one of the big things that for me, I'd always been a supporter of the work they did, but I didn't truly see it in the nitty gritty until that time in 2020. And it's really what completely flipped a switch for me.
Right.
And so, speaking on the pandemic, we're into, it's 2023. We're almost 3 years past the start of the pandemic. And so, with that, how would you say your business changed, or how was it different during the pandemic?
It was extremely different. It was different from anything that I had ever experienced in years previous. I've been blessed to have pretty consistent business for what my goals were up until the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, prior to the realtors and the Realtors Political Action Committee going to the State House and making us essential, I was preparing myself to get a second job, find a way to either work from home, because I did not think we were going to be able to be out in the streets the same level that we were beforehand. And that is so not the case. I remember sitting in a Zoom class one day, and I was at home. I was watching my niece and nephew because my sister is a medical provider. Actually, everybody else in my family is, and they were working, schools weren't in session, and I've got the flexible schedule. So I'm home with the kids, and my phone just started ringing, and it was different people. Now, granted, some of that had to do with some changes and innovations I was doing in my business as far as lead generation. But at the same token, this was the height of pandemic. People weren't going out, and my phone was just ringing. Hey, interest rates have dropped. I think I want to buy a house. Hey, my mother said to call. I think this is a great time for me to buy a house. Hey, Desiree, our family is growing and we need to sell this house and upgrade. And I'm sitting here thinking, ooh, well, how is that going to work? But yeah, I want to help you. That's great. Let's do something. And it was nonstop, which I have never experienced. The consistent flow of people calling, wanting to buy, wanting to sell. And during that time, because of the pandemic, interest rates were lower than anyone has ever seen. Mm-hmm. So that made it possible for people who were marginal as far as what their options were, as far as buying, to honestly have a supreme increase in their buying power. So people who could only afford 100 are now in the 150 range, and my 200s are now 250 or higher. And everybody wanted to do it right now because they were afraid that they were going to get shut down, or they were going to lose their job, or that interest rates were going to jump up and they would be back to where they were. So the rush was on to help as many people as quickly as you could, because nobody knew how things were going to be from month to month. We knew that the pandemic was here, but we didn't know if we were going to be shut down and forced to be inside. We didn't know if rates were going to change. And so people were just trying to move as quickly as they could before they lost the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. We saw unprecedented buyer demand during the pandemic because of those low interest rates, because people were just moving. We saw a lot of lifestyle changes during COVID. And so people were looking. You and I have seen, in the time we've been in business, we've seen people go for the big box with lots of rooms and lots of space, and then back down to more efficient size homes and things like that. And then kind of at the start of COVID, we saw them going back for more space, right? Mm-hmm. Like more yards, more land.
And the need for more space had a different feel to it. Before, it was go big, show everybody what you can do, maximize on your income. But then with the pandemic, families were separated, people were losing their jobs. And so the need to go big was coupled with, I need to bring more people in the house. I need to move in family members, or my college-age children need to come home, because if not, then we're not going to see them for months on end. So that push for larger homes came with that multi-generational factor, which I hadn't seen as much before. You've got whole families moving back in, parents with young children moving back in with grandparents, so people could get assistance with homeschooling and jobs. And you can check on, make sure mom and dad are doing well, and not be across the country and can't travel to come see them. That's the first time that I'd seen this, that the supreme need for multi-generational access inside of one structure, or if not the one structure, proximally close to where it was more convenient for everyone and you could have that safe health cluster.
Yeah. We saw with that demand, I mean, we also just saw a lot of frustration during that time.
Lots of frustration.
And people who ended up, not buying because of that. But can you talk a little bit about what it was like to go through that time period where you were having to, with your buyers having to fight for not just multiple offer situations, but extreme offer situations?
Right.
Can you talk a bit about that?
There were, historically for me, there were only a couple of areas in the Metro Columbia area that you saw demand for. When you would think Shandon or certain areas in Forest Acres, when houses came on the market, you were used to seeing a couple of cars lined up because that's just where everybody wanted. It was a status type of thing. I never expected to see 15 cars in a row outside a house that was listed at 180, and to see that house at 180 sell for 250. That was mind blowing. And the first couple of times it happened, I think for a lot of us, we were like, oh, this is interesting. This is great. And then it became the standard. And it changed how we had to talk to our clients because, your clients who were approved at 200,000, you had to have that conversation before you hit the road. Okay, I know this house is at your price point. Are you flexible? Do you have any more? Do you have any cash? I'm not trying to spend your pocket, but I am fairly certain based on the last 15 houses, this house is going to sell for more than that. And it did. I have never seen more people come up with more cash to buy houses as I have in the last 2 years. Every now and then you'd hear cash buyers and you'd be like, oh, they bought that house for cash. And you'd be like, oh, wow, that's great. But to work with several clients over the course of 6 months and lose every deal to a cash buyer creates a level of frustration that, honestly, I wasn't equipped to handle. I muddled through it, and good communication and good relationships with my clients made it easier. But I've never had to explain, oh yeah, that house sold for 35,000 over. How did they do it? They said it was cash. I've never had to write as many offers for a single client as I ever have. I think my personal max for a single client in this last 2.5-year period was 14 offers before we got a house that we could actually close.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, we always, there's the internal running joke that realtors often are unlicensed therapists sometimes, right? And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic and during this housing rush.
Yeah.
And that can take a toll on somebody. That can take a toll on yourself. How did you work your way through that of constantly taking in people's frustrations and their emotions, their high emotions because of this intense moment going on in their lives? How did you juggle that with having that through multiple clients, and then dealing with your own frustrations because you're also experiencing this business change from what you've been accustomed to?
If I had to be totally honest, I didn't. You can only fake it, but so long, and then you crash and burn. And as you know, I had a crash and burn moment where I threw up my hands, pulled out my tissue, and I curled into a fetal ball and snotted and cried until I felt a little better, because you take your clients' successes and failures personally, but you're dealing with your own health, your family, and other things. And it's a lot. That comment about being an unlicensed therapist is real. I had clients who were homeless during this process, in the process of trying to buy a home, and ready to give up, and having to look someone in their face and say, I know you're homeless and I know you want to buy this house, but if you walk away from this deal, you will never buy a house, is a very hard comment to make to someone.
Mhm.
But the reality is when their price point no longer exists anywhere in this market and they want a new home, if you want to buy this house at 185, I'm gonna need you to be homeless for a couple of more months.
Right.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. It hurt them. It hurt me. But we saw the bigger picture and they persevered. But I've never had to tell someone be content being homeless
Right.
if you want to buy a house. And for me, that was the beginning of my break because I felt for my client. I knew what they were going through. It took me 2.5 years even to get them ready to buy,
Mhm.
only for them to be out of their apartment and bouncing between their car and family members because the construction process took so long.
Mhm.
It's
Will,
hard to really put into words how badly something like that wears on you.
well, and I think that speaks to, something you said earlier, how much you wear the emotions of your clients, and also just how much you treasure the relationships you do have with your clients. Having known you as long as I've known you, and having, knowing what I know about your business, you and I have known each other basically the entire time we've been in real estate.
Mhm.
And so knowing that, I know that you care deeply about your clients and you care about getting them in the right position to make that purchase or to sell that home. And I think that speaks to, the growth you've seen in your business because you're able to cultivate those relationships so well. What do you feel like, you know, I guess talk to me a little bit about that process. Like how you see a lot of people who go years upon years and they just have new business all the time because they don't necessarily have a lot of repeat business or a lot of referral business. How do you put those relationships as the focus of your business? How do you make that work within your business?
I don't think you can ever truly help someone unless you take the time to get to know them. Um, and when you are helping someone buy a house, as realtors, we are privy to a lot more information and a lot more details about their personal life and their personal motivations than many other businesses that they can interact with. And I think that's important. And I think that's something that I have to be mindful of. Anytime you're asking someone about their money and how they earn a living, you're treading into territory that they oftentimes don't share with family members. And I respect that level of trust that they put in me when we have to ask questions and they start sharing those details. And I tell them, it stays with me. It goes nowhere. If your mama calls and says, I hear she's buying a house, I'm going to deadpan mom on the phone and be like, is she really? Tell her to call me because it's not my job to share that information.
Right.
And because my clients know I respect them and my code keeps me keeping their information confidential, I learn so much. And once you learn so much about someone, you can't help but to care and to empathize and to feel their highs and feel their lows because whatever is motivating them to purchase or to sell is still a part of who they are. So whether it's family related, job related, changes in family structure, I can't help but not to care. And that caring, and I actually have a pretty good memory, makes it great because I remember the kids, I remember the sports, I remember the difficulty you may have gone through with a spouse, and when you remember things and you check on them and inquire, they remember that. And they like working with people they like and
Mhm.
who trust and care for them as well. And I
Mhm.
think for me, I've got a dad who tends to be, as you know, real gregarious. Daddy talks to everybody with his hand in your mouth or not. And he gets you relaxed. And when you can get folks to relax and trust you, then everything moves a little better. And then when you add memory and follow up to that, that's how you end up with um, taking on some of the feelings that I've taken on because you remember everything. You're
Mhm.
feeling what they felt. You laugh and you cry, um, but you become family. Honestly, there's so many houses in the city that if I was hungry today, I could probably just pick up the phone and be like, "Are you at home? Are you cooking today? Did you cook yesterday? Because I know it's your day to cook," and grab a meal because that's the type of relationship we created.
Mhm. So I love that because a lot of, there's a lot of different ways to earn business in this industry. But I think at the heart of it, the ability to create relationships and cultivate those relationships is the most consistent way to continue a business. So kind of stepping off of that, because I realized I didn't get into something that I meant to talk about already. I wanted to talk about go back to the market a little bit. So we were in this really high buyer demand, crazy offers, just absolute chaos,
Insanity.
insanity. Exactly. But then at the end of the summer, basically early fall, we saw interest rates start to come back up.
Mhm.
And can you speak a little bit on what you have seen from your perspective, of the market, of the conditions for buyers and sellers? What things to you have looked like over the past few months?
Over the past few months, they kind of remind me what they were um, prior to 2018, maybe that 2009, 10, just as far as the pacing, not the money, not the interest rates or anything like that, but just the pacing where houses are on the market a reasonable amount of time. You have buyers who are interested, and people are now able to potentially take their time and look at houses and look at options versus the last couple of years where my comments were, if you see it and you like it, I need to know before we get out the driveway so I can try to get ahead of this. Now people can have a few more options and a chance to breathe, and maybe a little less buyer's remorse because you jumped fast because you knew if you didn't, you were definitely going to lose, versus just having that time to make a paced, educated decision. So I see
Mhm.
the pacing slowing down a little bit.
Okay.
Still lots of people out there in the market trying to buy. And I think a lot of them now have buyer's remorse because they didn't move when their friends and their coworkers and their family moved a year or a year and a half ago. But the desire to take part in that dream of home ownership is still there.
Mhm.
And your sellers still are moving. And for us, we're a military and a college town. So people are still moving and transitioning all the time. Whereas in other markets, you don't have that type of traffic. So it may have slowed down even more than what folks may have seen around here.
Mhm. Would you say that, with we've seen kind of that pace slow down a little bit, but fair to say that while the demand might not be as chaotic, we're not really seeing prices drop a whole lot from that inflation that we saw during COVID?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I don't even know if prices are ever going to go back to pre-COVID pricing because, all of the external factors that triggered that, the storms in Texas, the supply chain issue, the boats being stuck off the coast and people having to find other ways to get materials in. I think that put us where we are a lot. And so
Mhm.
I don't anticipate prices ever returning to back to where they were pre-COVID. Would I like to see that? Absolutely, because I think there was a little bit more affordable housing then. But I don't see that return. What I do see is people's acknowledgement of, as my kids say, it is what it is. So, the prices are what they are right now. The interest rate is what it is right now. And so, if I want to buy, I need to be a little bit more prepared, whether it's save, whether it's talking to family members, whether it's different programs that are in place. I think people are being a little bit more intentional with their decisions towards home buying right now because of where everything is.
Okay. So, um, let's see. Is there anything that you feel like, um, I guess, is anything and you'd want to share additionally about being a realtor or being in the real estate industry that you'd want to share with other realtors or with potential buyers and sellers?
I think the one thing that I would share, well, two things that I would share is number one, you got to love it. Real estate is not for the faint of heart. Even coming into it all those years ago, I had a plan in place because I knew there was a potential for me not to have any money coming in for a while. So I planned before I stepped out into real estate. I talked to folks to find out what the fees and the expenses were so I could save and just have that money set to the side so I could work and not appear hungry while I was working. I could work and be comfortable while doing it. Um, Unfortunately, I think, TV and technology had a lot of people thinking what we do is so easy. We're either non essential or that anybody could do it. And I think some folks learned the hard way that there's just a lot more skill and work that goes on in the background to making someone a successful real estate professional. Um, but you got to love it. If you don't love it, it will show because you will come across disingenuous or money hungry, and you won't get that repeat business because people will see your motivation isn't anything other than you. And my second point is find another why. You know, don't just do this because of the money. What is your why? Is it to make a difference? Is it to rebuild your community? Is it to educate young people about how to be financially responsible? Find your why and make that a part of why you do this. Because that will bring you some personal satisfaction that survives beyond the money.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming on with us today. I know you do a ton. You're highly involved not only with the real estate association, but here at JPAR, you're a member of our leadership team. You're in charge of handling all of our training and educating our agents. You have your own busting business that you deal with on a day-to-day and you're also one of our mentors as well. So your ability to continuously give does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Crystal.
Of course. Well, if for anybody that is looking to get more information about JPAR or about Desiree specifically, you can always visit our website at jparmagnolia.com. We are always happy to help or have a conversation with anybody who's looking to learn more or get prepared for their journey into real estate, whatever that may look like. And next week, we're going to be on here starting our mentorship series. So we'll be talking with our mentorship director, starting some conversations with our different mentors. So we'll see Desiree back here in a few weeks and getting to see a little bit more behind the scenes of our mentorship program. So tune in next week, and I hope you guys all have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you later.